We
Okay.
can just do some like intros before we start for the recording.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I am Cash Goldblum. I will be the first and third speaker for the government.
And I'm Moses, and I'll be the second speaker of the government.
All right, I'm Lucas. I'm going to be the first and third speaker on the opposition.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex. I'm going to be the second.
And we're from Rodda's Disciples.
Yeah, and we're from Berkeley. Before I start my speech, I want to thank all of the amazing people that are hosting this tournament. I want to thank the NYPDL board, and I want to thank basically everyone here watching this round, including my mom. I'm really happy she's here supporting me. And thank you to all of the judges that are here judging and taking time out of your day to come and watch debate rounds. We really appreciate it. So thank you. Okay. Oh, thank you. Um, okay. So I have a 7-minute speech. Does everybody have the topic? This house, as someone whose loved one disappeared for months without explanation, would rather believe they chose to leave than believe they were dead. You don't actually have any proof of anything either which way. Okay, great. Before I start my speech, a lot of stuff before I start my speech, I would like to give a trigger warning of like brief mentions of self-harm. It's not going to be anything like too graphic. It's just like describing self-harm. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, cool. Then my time will begin in three, two, one, now. Judges, imagine losing someone you love without any explanation. The human mind instinctively searches for meaning. In that void, what we choose to believe shapes our mental health, our ability to function, and the life we go on to live. This round isn't about morality or correctness, it's about resilience. Believing your loved one chose to leave preserves hope, protects against psychological collapse, and allows you to grow, whereas believing they are dead too early risks trauma that can devastate a person for years. At that point, I am so proud to propose. Okay, we have a couple things on top of case before getting into our three contentions. So on characterizing what belief actually means in this round, you have no certainty of what actually happened because it's unclear what happened. Again, it says that in the motion, but your best prediction and overall belief is that they are still alive and just left. Probably people don't just go out and die. The loved one is anyone the speaker has a meaningful personal connection with, like a family member, a partner, or a close friend, and disappeared just means gone without explanation for an extended period of time, like let's say months. The weighing mechanism for this round will just be net benefits or the most amount of good to the most amount of people. Okay, my first contention is that believing that they are dead is incredibly traumatic and deeply distressing. Believing the loved one is dead too early triggers trauma, grief, and cascading emotional damage. We have 5 warrants under this contention. The first is on acute grief responses. Premature acceptance of death activates severe grief, including depression, anxiety, insomnia, and even PTSD like symptoms. So what does this mean? It means that cognitive performance, work, and relationships deteriorate. The individual may be unable to function normally. The individual may struggle to maintain basic routines and experience massive emotional outbursts and lose the ability to make rational decisions once they get extraordinarily stressed out that this person that they loved for so many years is now dead. Second is on the loss of agency and purpose. Accepting death removes motivation to seek answers or closure, creating feelings of helplessness. The individual may internalize guilt, feel powerless, and then stop pursuing meaningful actions. The person feels powerless to actually do anything, trapped by circumstances, which increases vulnerability to learned helplessness and long-term despair. Third, on social withdrawal and isolation, belief in death can lead to detachment from friends, family, and social support networks. So, isolation compounds grief and mental health deterioration, increasing long term vulnerability. Reduced social contact exacerbates this depression. It removes emotional scaffolding and increases a long-term mental health risk. So you're basically cutting off everybody that you have ever gotten support from in your entire life, and you are going to have a much lesser mental health. The fourth warrant is on chronic emotional dysregulation. Premature acceptance risks rumination, intrusive thoughts, and inability to regulate emotions effectively. This can lead to substance abuse, self-harm, or even persistent anxiety affecting long-term quality of life. Emotional instability may result in conflict with others, impulsive decisions, or again, even self-harm, which is really, really bad. And The fifth and final warrant is on long-term functional impairment. Trauma from early belief in death can manifest in impaired career performance, decision-making, and daily life skills. The individual is at risk of long-term psychological damage and the loss of life satisfaction, so career, education, and daily responsibilities suffer, compounding psychological stress and life instability. So the overall impact of this contention is that the individual experiences severe emotional collapse, social isolation, and impaired agency and life dysfunction, making them unable to thrive or recover psychologically. This is the worst case terminal impact in this round. Our second contention is on hope and possibility of a return. If you believe someone has left, the possibility still exists that they may return or that you may find them again in some capacity. So we have a couple warrants for this. We have three. The first is that you keep looking for them and you may find them. People go missing and then come up again later all the time. This is the most common outcome. Look, judges, I had an ex-love interest who went missing, but people didn't give up hope and we eventually found them, and it was extraordinarily relieving for me that I didn't just think that they died and it's over. Like, I was still out there. I was helping see if they were still okay. But uniquely, presumption of death ends all manhunt efforts, and there aren't people out there looking for them. They may not be found, and they may not be given the help they need. It is uniquely likely that if you go search, you will most likely find them. Most people who go missing have unique mental health crises, just like my example, or are trying to escape something so they can be found again, especially by someone who they love and want to be found by. But second, even if you don't find them, you have hope that you will. The notion that someone may one day return is comforting because you know their absence is not necessarily definitive of your relationship. And finally, third, the person who went missing likely needs help. A huge number of people who go missing are desperate and in need of help in order to come out okay. Presuming them dead removes any chance of anyone looking for them and seeking to give them the help they so desperately need. All police investigations and basically all chance of them coming back is gone. The impacts are threefold. If you find them, this is like all. If you find them and this is all undone, you're happy again, everything's fine. If you don't find them, you still have hope, which is uplifting. And the third impact is that you get the potential to get to the person the help that they actually need is beneficial to both the actor and the love interest. But our final contention is on personal growth. Basically, believing the loved one chose to leave promotes adapting, coping, and long-term personal
Wait,
growth.
POC, sorry.
Yep.
I only flowed two sub contentions for your second contention. Did you say a third? Maybe I
Yeah,
missed it.
third was just like the person who went missing likely needs help. Did you get that one?
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay, great. I have myself at 557. I will continue my time now. Okay, we have three reasons to believe this. The first is on narrative coherence. Viewing the disappearance as a choice allows the individual to construct a meaningful story instead of being overwhelmed by chaos. So cognitive clarity improves, reducing intrusive thoughts and emotional disarray. This is a massive mental health impact. Second, on empowerment, recognizing the loved one's autonomy reduces self-blame and encourages constructive emotional processing. So this house maintains healthy relationships and life goals. And third, on adaptive coping, belief in choice cultivates proactive strategies to handle uncertainty and adversity. So emotional resilience increases, sustaining life functionality and psychological stability. So the overall impact is that the individual achieves long-term emotional stability, functional agency, and personal growth, avoiding paralysis from grief and despair that you see on the opposition case. So on hope versus trauma versus growth, believing the loved one chose to leave maximizes hope. It prevents severe psychological trauma and it fosters personal growth, while prematurely assuming death risks trauma, helplessness, and stagnation. A resilient, hopeful, and functional individual is on AF versus a traumatized, hopeless, and immobilized individual on neg. And at that point, I am so proud to propose. Thank you.
Hopefully everyone can hear me well. So I guess just for some pleasantries, thanks for the tournament. Thanks for coming to judge. Thanks for spectating. And thanks to my dad for judging, and I'm pretty sure he's watching. So hopefully you enjoy the round. I'll go top of case, then op case, then gov case. I'll start my time in 3, 2, 1. We agree with the definitions of belief and of what a loved one is, but on the framework of net benefits, we simply just don't buy it. Why is this? Because this is an act emotion. This house is a specific individual. And how do individuals work? They care most about themselves and impacts to themselves. So their motion that benefits is entirely abusive because, very frankly, I don't think this individual cares about what the entire world wants, how the entire world will be benefited. No, this individual cares about what's best for themselves. And while other actors and while other things may play a part in that, primarily all actors are self-interested. They want what's best for themselves as an individual. Given that, I'll move into my case. Our first contention is on processing this loss is a lot better on our side. The first sub-contention is like the difficulty of processing that the loved one left. There's a couple reasons for this. First, on their side, there's a ton of uncertainty because you don't actually know why they left or what's happened to them. Did they leave because of me? Will they come back? What's happening to them right now? Are they in danger? And as a result, it's constantly on your mind because you never have any closure to what's happened, given that there's a lack of explanation. So just given that, for every minute that they don't return, that's another minute where you're stressful, where you're unhappy, where there's tons of uncertainty running throughout your mind, and that has terrible impacts upon you. And the weighing is really easy. This is a super long-term impact. Every single moment where they're gone, you're worried, you're unhappy, you have no way to get closure because you think they might be alive out there, and that permeates into every single sector of your life. Every single moment of the day, you're worrying and you're unhappy, and it can lead to self-blame where you think maybe this person left because of me. Second warn is that we think that inherently them choosing to leave you as an action is something that you view as wrong. This is because you knew that they knew that you loved them and they didn't actually tell you why they left. So you're a lot more susceptible to demonizing them in your mind. This person chose to leave me. This person wanted to leave me. This person didn't like me. So instead of actually cherishing your good memories with this person or with this individual, you end up demonizing them because the best way to overcome your pain and your suffering is to say that this is a bad person and that's why all these bad things are happening. They chose to leave me because they're a bad person. The second contention is on the comparative ease of processing death. First, we think that psychologically, it's comparatively easier to process death because psychologically, the mind can process death simply because it is a finality. You can conceptualize that this is the end of this individual, and therefore, it allows you to get over it over time as you go through the process of grief. The second is that this memory of the person is still warm. When death is accepted, you can memorialize and treat this person's final moments and final image as sacred. You can say this person was a great person, a nice person. They died being a loved one. But when you view them as running away, it can meddle with your perception of them. It can fill you with hate and anger. Why would you choose to leave me? Why did you leave me? Was it because you hated me? And these can ruin the memories that you have with this person that otherwise you would have cherished. It can just lead to resentment because you never have any finality. And then the third thing is that most people have experienced death within their lives. Most people have experienced a loved one die. And the implication of this is that as the average person, you can probably get over death. This isn't to say that you won't grieve or you won't be sad. Or huh? Did you POI? Oh, maybe I misheard something. Sorry. But you can get over death simply because everyone experiences grief. And given that you know how to process grief, you know how to process these sad incidents. So as time goes on, sure, initially you're sad and grieving, but say after a year, you can comfortably go throughout your life while still respecting the memory of this individual. So, and then but if you're not someone who hasn't experienced death, say like you're someone who's never had a loved one die before, it's uniquely good to learn how to grieve and get over death because death is something you'll experience most likely more than once within your life. In which case, when you accept this person as dying, you learn how to grieve, you have your friends and family to support you, and ultimately it provides you closure as well as giving you the fundamental skill of getting over loss. You probably just, and you don't have to think that oh, this person just decided to leave me. So the weighing is really simple. Death is something that is that is an absolute experience on both sides of this house. Your loved ones running away is something that you will never likely experience again. So just comparatively, viewing this experience as a death allows for more individual development insofar as that you learn how to grieve. Whereas if you learn how to get to terms with someone running away from you, that'll never really be applicable again in your life. And then the next thing here, or the next major warrant. I think the fourth one is that it lets you reach the stage of acceptance reach the stage of acceptance in grief far easier, because it's really hard to accept that a loved one will just leave you. This is important because the telos of grief is acceptance. Once you finish grief, you come to terms with the loss, and you live, and you still love this person, but you come to terms and learn how to move on. So when you view this person as having died, you can go through the stages of grief uninterrupted with your friends and family by your side. But when you view this person as still alive, it's impossible to accept the grief because you have no mechanism for getting any type of closure, which allows for the process of both rumination and the process of grieving and getting over loss. And then the fifth and final thing is that society has actual structures to let you mourn death. You have parents, you have funerals, you have friends, and society is accustomed to helping people get over death. There's things like therapists and counselors to help you through in the extreme distress, which is that uniquely society has mechanisms which allow you to get over this death, whereas they probably don't have mechanisms to allow you to get over the idea of your friend or your loved one choosing to want to leave you. With that being said, I'll go on to their case. They have two contentions. The first is on like believing that they are dead is bad, you feel grief. But none of their arguments or warrants that are specific to death. We think that in both worlds, you likely experience grief, anger, and sadness because one way or another, someone who you dearly loved has left you. So just very clearly, all of these impacts are likely non-unique insofar as on both sides you'll be sad, on both sides you'll likely be unhappy. But uniquely, you might actually feel more unhappy on their side where you think this person has chosen to leave you, that they wanted to leave you. And insofar as that is the case, it might lead to either self-hate, where you think you are the problem, which leads to even more, which means worse mental health impacts. But it can also just mean that, you demonize this figure, which is just bad because you lose all those good memories. But let's go warrant by warrant. The first warrant of acute grief response is just non-unique. This person has left you in both worlds, so you're going to be sad, you're going to be angry, you're going to be unhappy and grieving. The second thing is the loss of agency and purpose, but I think just very clearly, this is non-unique because in both worlds, you've lost a person and you no longer feel happy, you feel unhappy. But uniquely in our world, you have a purpose, that being the purpose is to grieve, to get over the death. But in their world, there is no purpose because your friend has left you. What are you supposed to do? There's no actual method or no actual strategy to coming to terms with that. The third thing that they say is that belief in death will lead to detachment from friends. But evidently this is untrue. You don't cut off all your friends. In fact, you're more likely to seek solace and grieve with your friends and family, and you'll get closer to them through death. So you're crying and you go to your friends, or you're crying and you go to your parents. Very clearly, death can actually lead to getting closer to friends. But belief in that your friend has left you can lead to more detachment because you think you can start, believing in self-hate. Maybe I'm a bad friend. Maybe I made this person leave my life. And that can make you alienate yourself from your friends because you think you are a problem. And then their final thing on rumination, it doesn't lead to rumination because you believe that they are dead. Death is a finality, which means there's no more thinking to do. You think that they are dead and you can get closure. But if you think that they're alive and you think that they might have left you for some reason, then that leads to infinite possibilities of rumination, which means that on their side, you're going to ruminate a lot more when you think that, hey, maybe my friend left me. Maybe they're in the Bahamas right now, or maybe they're going through a horrible experience. And then their fifth warrant is that trauma can lead to worse decision making, but this is just non-unique. You probably experience sadness and trauma on both sides, given that someone who you love has left you. With that, I urge an opposition ballot, and my partner will get to the rest of the claims given. Thank you, judges.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. So sorry, I really need to pee. Does anyone mind if I go use the bathroom in for 2 seconds?
Yeah, you're
That's
good.
chill. We've had that issue.
And we just started.
Okay, thanks so much. I'll be
Thought I had that issue too. Yeah.
Okay, I'm back. So sorry about that. Um, cool. Let me set up my timer. And again, yeah, just a huge thank you to all of the judges who took time out of their day to judge this tournament, all of the wonderful NYPDL board members who made this happen, our wonderful coach Joel Jacobs. I think he's watching this round. Thanks so much for everyone for running this incredible tournament. Cool. Okay. Again, my name is Moses Esterson. I'm so excited to be the second affirmation speaker in this debate. And if everyone is ready, I'm going to begin my time now.
So
Starting
Moses,
off on top of.
Moses, can you
Oh, yeah,
wait?
sorry. Yeah,
Let's
sorry.
make sure that Lucas and
Oh, yes.
they are here too.
Oh, sorry, we're here. Don't worry.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Starting my time now. Okay. Starting off on top of case, we said the weighing mechanism as net benefits. They say no because it's the actor motion. We should care about the actor thinks. Individuals don't just care about themselves, they care about others also, but regardless, it probably won't matter in this round. We think that generally, if like one of your close friends like dies or something, that has an impact on you as well. So we should be fine under either weighing mechanism in this round. Cool. Let's go on to opposition case. Their first contention is about processing, and they say it's hard to process leaving. Why did the person leave? What happened? It's uncertain. This death is uncertain too. It's not like you believe they died and you know exactly what happened. How did they die? Did someone kill them? Did they kill themselves? What caused that? People don't die of natural causes and then go missing. Something sinister happened here, and you will always have questions about that. You will always wonder about that. You will always wonder if they did something to themselves and why that happened, or why someone else would do something to them. This is a completely non-unique impact. You can't process what happened in either world. They say it'll be constantly on your mind because there's no closure. I have two responses to this. First of all, if you believe they're dead, you're not actually getting real closure because, as we said in our first speech, you only believe that they are dead. You have no actual proof of it, and so any possibility, however small, still exists in your mind. The only real closure is proof. It's actually finding some proof that they did die. We can look to an example of this if during World War II, the families of missing in action soldiers, they believed that their sons or their husbands were dead, but they didn't feel closure until getting any actual physical proof, which you can only get if you can only get when you actually have proof and you actually
Hey,
look at
POC,
them.
sorry.
Sure.
Lucas's internet just cut out.
Oh,
The last thing I flowed was that the death is uncertain too. You can just explain your
okay,
responses
cool.
that you
Yeah.
made after that off the
Oh,
flow.
the last thing. Okay, so you missed like a good minute there, is what you're saying.
Yeah, just say off the
Okay,
flow.
okay,
It's
okay.
fine.
Yeah, I'll say it off time.
Yeah.
So our first response was that you guys said that it's hard to process leaving. Why did they leave? What happened? We said death is uncertain too. How did they die? Did someone kill them? Did they kill themselves? What caused that? People don't die of natural causes and then go missing. So something seriously sinister happened here, and you don't know what it is. You are always going to have those questions. This happens in either world. And then the next thing I said, I've got into two responses on your closure point. I said, first of all, it isn't real closure. You only believe that they are dead, as my partner said in his first speech. You have no actual proof of it, and so any possibility, however small, still exists in your mind, and the only real closure is proof. I brought up the example of World War II soldiers' families who believed their children these soldiers that were missing in action, their families believed that they were dead, but they didn't feel any closure because they didn't actually have any physical proof. They didn't have a body or anything, and the only way you can find actual physical, tangible proof is if you look for them. Is that clear that all up?
Okay, so that's where you're at now?
Yeah, that's and I'm
Okay,
just
cool,
about to
cool,
read my
cool.
second response to closure. Am I good
Yeah,
to resume
sorry.
my time? Am I good? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yes, you're permitted.
Okay, resuming time now. Our second response is that you can grieve and move on from someone missing too. You can accept that they are no longer in your life. That is something that you can accept. Maybe you need to look for them for a little bit, but eventually that's something you can accept. You can have real closure and real processing of that too. They give no unique reason why someone dying is easier to process than them just not being there anymore. They said their second warrant is about choosing to leave. The reason they chose to leave you is viewed as wrong, and they don't know. The person wouldn't know why they left, and you're opening to demonizing them in your mind. Look, they didn't leave you; they just left. Look, you probably aren't the reason that they left, and you probably know that. Most missing people leave for personal reasons. You're someone that they actually love, and probably pained them to leave you, and you won't feel forgotten. You know that there were other things going on in their life that could potentially lead to them leaving. You're not going to blame yourself. You're not going to demonize them, because you know they didn't mean to hurt you, and you didn't hurt them. All right. Their second contention is about the comparative ease of processing death. This is basically the first contention, but I'll read responses to it anyways. First of all, you never get over, even if you believe that they die, you still never get over it because you still get no closure. People don't die of natural causes and go missing. Something sinister happened and that's going to tear you apart. You don't actually have any real closure if you believe they're dead. Number two, grief is a process, but it's an agonizing one and it never truly leaves. Losing a close loved one to death is one of the most debilitating experiences ever. It harms your immediate life, which has long-term repercussions. For example, you could pull away from your friends and family, reducing your social network, or you could stop caring about school, reducing your chances of being successful in the future. My dad lost his father when he was very young. It doesn't hurt him like it once did, but he certainly never got over it, and it will always be a scar weighing in on his life, and that time period where he was in active extreme grief will always weigh in on his life. And they said like most people have experienced death within your life, and you can probably get over death. Again, you can also get all of this closure from someone leaving. You come to terms with the fact that they are no longer a part of your life. The difference is, the only difference in these two worlds is that in our world, you presume them alive. You presume that they have this person that you care deeply about hasn't died. You can still get closure, you just believe that they are alive. And then basically everything else right on this contention is non-unique. There are plenty of other ways to get over someone leaving. They give no reason why it's inherently easier to get over someone dying than someone leaving, right? Especially if they were murdered or murdered themselves or some other crazy sinister thing happened, which again, you just have no idea about. Cool. Our first contention is about believing that they are dead is incredibly traumatic and distressing. And they say you experience this in both worlds, and that these are non-unique impacts, but you feel uniquely happy on the upside because otherwise you demonize them. Okay, sure, you'll experience grief or sadness in both worlds, but knowing someone is dead, murdered, their life snuffed out from this world, and their existence on this earth removed just as fast as it began, that in and of itself is incredibly harmful relative to them just going to some other place. They say all of these responses are non-unique because this happens in either world. Look, death is uniquely the worst thing. In Gov, you believe that they aren't with you anymore, and on side Neg, you believe that they are dead, and the person you cared about so much had literally the worst thing happen to them, where they were basically killed. This isn't symmetrical in both worlds. This is asymmetrical because you don't just care about how this affects your life. You care about how it affects someone else's. That's what caring about someone is. That you care about how it affected the life of the person leaving. So sure, in either world, they're no longer part of your life. But the difference is, in our world, you believe they still have an ongoing life, and because you care about them, that is a benefit to you, and that is an overall benefit. Whereas when you presume that they are dead, you presume that they are no longer living, and thus the part of you that cares about them is going to be deeply hurt, and again, they're a loved one. They said like it's not true that you're gonna have social withdrawal and isolation. Again, the paralysis of such a horrid event often leads to this. When my friend's father died, he pulled away, and it hurt him in irreparable ways that he still deals with to this day. And then side opposition didn't have any responses to our second or third contention. I believe the leader of the opposition said his partner will respond to them, and I certainly hope that is true and I certainly hope he would be able to do a better job because the leader of the opposition evidently couldn't. But look, here's what we're analyzing in this round. In both worlds, presumably you can have some process of closures, some process of getting over it. And in both worlds, there isn't perfect closure. In both worlds, you don't really know what happened, and you don't know definitively what happened. The difference is, in our world, in the affirmation world, you actively keep looking for the person, which means you have the potential to save their life and to undo all of the harm that's been done to you and your community. And you don't have all of these incredible psychological harms of believing that someone that you truly loved is dead, is gone from this earth. That is the overall comparison we were making in this world. Don't buy any of opposition's arguments about how it's actually easier to process someone dying than someone leaving, because it isn't. Death is inherently a worse thing than someone leaving, and you don't think they left, and you know that they didn't leave because of you, they left for some other reason. If the person is still out there, is still somewhere living a life in your mind, that is in and of itself closure. You believe that they are still living, they are still experiencing the joys and the joys of life, and that is inherently what love is. It's that connection to that person. It's caring about what happens to them, not only what happens to you. And that's why we believe it would be so much preferable to believe that the person is still out there, still alive, just missing, than that they have been cruelly murdered, or something terrible has happened to them. So, for all these reasons, I could not be prouder to propose. Thank you.
Okay,
You?
cool. So the order of this speech is just gonna be like, I'll just go op case, gov case. Assuming everyone's ready, I'm just gonna start my timer right now. Moses just gave you 8 minutes of why death is bad, but he failed to actually be comparative because we can agree that the process of death is bad, but they've never proven to you why it's better than someone who you loved choosing to leave you without them telling you why they did it in advance and without you knowing what they are currently doing now. So maybe death is bad, but they've never actually proven why it's worse than a person leaving you without telling why, without you knowing where they are in the world. With that, let's go on to the op case. Let's start on our first contention. The first response they give you is that this death is uncertain too. First, sure, like the reason of the death may be uncertain, but we have the additional analysis that you don't know what's happening to them. So if on both sides you're unclear as to why they died or as to, why they left, on their side, you have the additional layer of uncertainty that they exist now. You don't know what's happening to them. You don't know if they're in danger, if they got kidnapped. So yes, sure, to some degree, death is uncertain, but
Point of
on their
information.
side, the decline, there's an additional layer of uncertainty that we think is really bad. But the second thing I want to note is that their decision to leave, as they frame it, was an autonomous decision. And there's no response to the analysis Lucas gave you that the person who left knew you loved them. And they didn't actually tell you why they left. So we think as a result, you are more susceptible to demonizing them because this is someone you attach to and they never actually gave you the generosity to tell you why they left. This was completely conceded out of Moses' speech, and I think it beats a lot of their arguments on uncertainty. Because if youth are more susceptible to thinking they left without telling you, you're more susceptible to demonizing them and thinking that they were a bad person, which makes the process of grief infinitely worse. The second thing they tell you is that it isn't real closure because you only believe in the death and it's not an absolute belief. But like, I think at the end of the day, you believe it and you believe it to the largest degree. Obviously, like per their definition, you don't believe anything 100%, but we think it's pretty damn close, like 90%. And obviously, if you believe in death, you have closure because that's the end. Death is the end. There's no more for you to think about. Once you get over the initial process of grieving the death itself, you're fine. On their side, you need to get over the process of them leaving, but then you also have to get through the additional layers that they left without telling you, that this could have been your fault, and you don't know where they actually are. So there's comparatively many more stages of grief on their side, which we think makes the process of grief comparatively worse. Then they say you can grieve and move on from someone missing too. Like, sure, there's a possibility of you moving on, but our argument isn't that, 100% it doesn't happen, but comparatively, on their side, it's far harder to grieve. So we're not denying you can get past it, but our argument is because there's so many layers of grief that you are uncertain of, you're probably not going to grieve and move on from that. That's our argument. Then lastly, they say they didn't leave you, they just left. But I think notably, they left with you in your life, in their life. And again, there's no response to the analysis that they knew you loved them and they didn't actually tell you why they left. So again, you are more susceptible to demonizing them and viewing them in a negative light. Then on our second contention, they say you never get over death because you get no closure. But the closure is that they're dead. That's the end. Once you get over the conceptualization of them dying, you're done with your grieving. On their side, you need to get through far more layers. Then they say that death is a process, but it's an agonizing one. Again, we agree that both processes are agonizing, but our argument was that death is comparatively way less agonizing. There were 4 dropped warrants as to why. First, there's no response to the really good psychological argument that, like, psychologically, it's comparatively easier to process death because the mind can't process death because it's a finality. So you can't really conceptualize death as a person. So over time, you get over it because you don't understand it. That was dropped by Moses. Second, there was the warrant that the memory of this person is still warm. When death is accepted, the loved one's memory becomes sacred. They die being someone you loved. They died being a loved one. So you remember them as someone good. But on their side, you're more susceptible to view them as running away. It can fill you with hate and anger. Why did you choose to leave me when you knew I loved you? Which means on their side, the memory of this person is cold. On our side, it is warm. Again, there's no response to that analysis. Third is just that most people have experienced death in their lives, and this just hasn't been interacted with whatsoever. Most people have had a loved one die, and the implication of this is that you, as the average person, can probably get over this death because you understand how to grieve and get over it. Death is something that happens far more to people rather than, someone just completely disappearing and choosing to disappear. Which means if you've experienced death, it's way easier for you to get over it. But even if you're not someone who has experienced death, we think it's uniquely good to learn how to grieve over death. Death is something that you will probably experience in your life, in which case, on our side, you learn how to grieve death. The next time your mother dies or a family member dies, we are equipped to actually get over it, which means the process of death isn't entirely bad because you now understand how to get over it, which means there's a unique benefit to our side. Fourth warrant, which is again just dropped, is that society has actual structures to let you mourn death. You have your parents who have experienced death. You have funerals. You have textbooks of psychological evidence on how to get people to grieve over death. Society is accustomed to death, which means uniquely you have mechanisms that allow you to grieve. Again, entirely conceded. Let's go on to their case. Their second contention was on the hope and possibility of the return. Their first subpoint is that you may find them by going to look for them. First response is that this is someone per the motion who has disappeared for months without explanation, which means you've already done searching. And this is important because the overwhelming majority of missing people are found within a few weeks to a month, which means if they're gone for multiple months, it's likely that you cannot find them and won't find them. And we think the probability that they haven't been found is incredibly low. And at that point, since the probability is so low, you should value the anxiety you feel and the time you spend trying to find them over the probability of them finding them. The reasoning for this is incredibly simple. We don't think that people should live in fear of, for example, pianos falling on their head. Because even if there's a huge potential benefit, which is avoiding a piano clocking you in the head, the anxiety you feel, first of all, is terrible and irrational. But second of all, the fact that you're spending your entire life over something that's so improbable is really bad. But second, we think that going to look for them is non-unique. Police searches will still happen and the police are always going to be better than you. Then they say you always have hope. But we think that this hope is bad because you constantly think that they can come back. And every day they don't, you are disappointed, which means your pain every single day renews itself. Every time you hear a ring on your doorbell, your pain renews itself because you have hope and then are let down. Then they say the person who went missing probably needs your help, but I beat this. We don't know. Then on coping, they say it doesn't encourage self-blame, but I think on their side, you're more likely to blame yourself because you didn't cause the death and you absolutely knew that. So for all those reasons, very proud to oppose.
Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm gonna give a pretty simple third speech. I'll go clarifications and where you're not voting up and where you're voting up. Starting in three, two, one. Top of case clarifications. First on framework, self-interest likely makes the most sense. Individuals tend to be extremely self-interested, but it doesn't matter too much for the round. Second, on what side are you left with more questions? Clearly, on their side, you think that this individual could have left for any given reason. But also at every single moment, you're thinking, what are they doing? How do they feel? What's happening to them? In our world, sure, questions will exist. How did they die? But you don't question at every single moment what's happening to this individual because you believe that they are dead. So comparatively, there's less questions on our side. So given that, where are you not voting for Gov? They have two major ballots. The first is that if you're going to be able to grieve better on our side. Two is I mean, no, the first voting point is like that of grief. Two responses. First of all, a lot of their impacts are non-unique. You will still feel grief. You'll still feel unhappy. You'll still feel loss in their world because someone has chosen to left you. And arguably that's worse than left because they chose to leave your life. And the second response is that comparatively in our world, getting to the acceptance stage of grief is much simpler because when you assume someone is dead, there are less questions. And while you may speculate about how they died, you don't have to speculate about what they're experiencing at every single moment. So just comparatively, it's much easier to get to the accepted stage of grief. So you can just drop this ballot. But where's the weighing? The short term versus long term. So sure, even if you buy that in the short term, death is really hard to get over compared to leaving. Realize that in the long term, you reach the acceptance stage of grief. You have friends and families and funerals and counselors and therapists and other mechanisms to help you get over the loss. This was unresponded to, by the way, which is that you will, in the long term, be able to get over this loss. However, in the op world, even if they initially feel less sadness or grief, they never actually have a real mechanism to get over it because they always consider that this individual is still alive. They're always asking questions, and every time a doorbell rings or someone knocks at the door or they hear or see something that reminds them of their friend, all that grief and all that sadness will just come right back. So they have no real mechanism for getting over all of this sadness and anger, and it permeates into the long term, which means in the long term, you'll never be able to get over this grief, and that is paralyzing. And the second place to vote is that of hope, but realize that hope leads to disappointment. Every day where they don't come home, you feel disappointment. Every time when someone knocks on your door and it isn't that person, you feel disappointment, which in and of itself is bad, but it eventually leads to resentment and demonization because when every time you think of this person, you also feel disappointed, that leads to demonization, that leads to you associating their memory with bad things. So given all of that, where can you vote for the op? You can vote on the way that I've already given you about how in the long term you can reach the acceptance stage of grief, and on their side they constantly experience grief and sadness, and they're constantly reminded of it in the long term. So just given that, there are more layers to their grief, and you can vote there because we in the long term can reach acceptance. They can never really reach that acceptance phase. It permeates into the long term, disrupting their life, disrupting their job, disrupting their day-to-day activities. That alone you can vote on. I've already explained that to you. But then the second place to vote, which is cleanly dropped, is our ballot of how death is comparatively easier to get over because you likely have experience with death in the past, which means that you understand how to grieve, and there's societal structures which help you, which goes unresponded to. You have friends and family to confide in. There are funerals, there are therapists. So there's clearly a ton of ways, and clearly there's a ton of ways to get assistance in getting over death. However, no real societal mechanism exists for someone just disappearing from your life. So comparatively, you have a much easier time grieving their death than grieving them leaving you. The third place of it, which also goes completely unresponded to, is that when you learn which is that you learn how to grieve. Given that this person has died, you learn how to grieve, you learn how to get over the loss of a loved one, and you learn how to reach acceptance, which is just extremely utile because throughout your life, you will feel more death. 100% in the future, someone else in your family, someone else who is your friend will die. And given that you in the past have now learned how to get over death and how to experience grief, you're going to have a much easier time to get over the death. But then comparatively, it's almost 0% chance that someone else in your life will just randomly leave for months on months. So just comparatively, learning how to get over death is much more useful for the rest of your life. And the final place to vote is just that of demonization, because in our world, we can let them die, we can let them rest, and we can have a good memory of them. But in their world, never letting them rest allows for demonization to happen. And for all those reasons, I couldn't be prouder to oppose. Thank you, judges.
Okay, hello, I'm back. Okay. Is everybody able to hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay, 5 minutes, wrapping up, telling you why the Gov wins this round. I will begin my time in 3, 2, 1, now. Judges, my ex-love interest disappeared for a really long time, and I had no idea if they were okay or even alive. Every day I felt anxious, scared, and helpless, but I kept telling myself they had chosen to leave. When I finally found them, I cried like I hadn't in years, and I felt this incredible relief. I could finally breathe, I could keep going, and I could keep moving forward. This round isn't about being right or wrong, it's about belief helping someone survive, keeping hope, and growing. And at that point, I'm so proud to propose. Okay, we have 2 points on framing that we should address. The first is that death is a uniquely horrendous experience. There is a massive clash on this in the round. Judges, this is very simple. You love this person. In either world, the person is not in your life anymore. You have to deal with all of the difficult things about that. But the question is, would you rather believe that the person is still in their own life? Caring about someone is caring about what happens to them. That is what love is. So let's talk about grief. Op seems to think that if someone dies, you think about it for 2 months and you feel fine. No. Grief never ends, and the worse the tragedy, the worse the grief. Someone dying is a greater tragedy than someone leaving. We have 2 reasons to prefer. The first is that you aren't getting any closure from this death because there is no finality. You have no clue what happened. Did they get killed? Did they get hit by a truck? Did they choose to end their own life? And 2, they never explain why it's actually harder to get over someone leaving. They say there's no finality, which concedes the reality there is if someone is not in your life. All of this analysis is done by my partner and goes completely conceded during the block. They bring up all of these things like textbooks and therapists, etc. They never explain why you can't do any of this in both worlds. A therapist can help you understand, and they probably, stopping time.
Yeah, first of all, this was unresponded to, which means we wouldn't have the time to respond. I didn't hear this out of most of the speech, and I also just don't think that was our argument.
But I'll just explain it. Initially we say there's mechanisms within the world to help you get over death, but you guys never respond to that. So I think you saying it's non-unique is a new response.
So Moses did respond to this in the MG. He responds to that textbooks and therapists, etc. Yeah, but it's also just non-unique. We said that in the MG.
Yeah, but I also think
there's no back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna continue. I have myself at 147. Okay, time begins in 3, 2, 1, now. A therapist can help you if they probably aren't coming back. On the comparative, you understand they aren't coming back and you can accept that. We think it's easier to accept somebody, or it's easier to accept that somebody could come back. Okay. We have 3 voter issues. The first is on psychological trauma. Believing your loved one is dead too early causes severe psychological trauma. Premature belief in death triggers acute grief, loss of agency, social withdrawal, chronic emotional dysregulation, and long-term functional impairment. These are 5 mechanisms that go massively undercovered in this entire round. Judge, imagine waking up every day convinced the person you love is gone forever. You can't sleep. You snap at everyone around you. You struggle to work or attend school, and you feel powerless to change anything. Friends stop calling because they don't know how to help, and every moment of joy is clouded by the sense that life has been irreversibly damaged. Op has 2 responses to this. They tell you that believing someone is dead provides closure, letting you grieve and move on. But this closure that they mention is false and incomplete. It eliminates hope and prevents natural coping. Believing they chose to leave allows for emotional processing, it preserves agency, and it keeps options open for support, reunion, or personal purpose. And their second response is they basically blanket all of my mechanisms with that it's non-unique, that grief happens whether you believe they left or died, so AF isn't special. But judges, this is evidently false. Trauma exists in both worlds, but the type and severity of the trauma is uniquely catastrophic in neg. In AF, the individual still experiences uncertainty, but retains hope, agency, and purpose. In neg, the individual is immobilized by trauma, they lose agency, they can't act, and they withdraw from life entirely. AF's trauma is manageable and growth promoting, neg's is terminal and paralyzing. The individual is spared debilitating trauma on AF, it maintains agency, and they stay socially connected, they retain life functionality. In neg world, the individual is emotionally collapsed, socially isolated, and psychologically impaired. Our second voter issue is on the possibility of a return. Believing the loved one chose to leave preserves hope and possibility of a reunion. You still believe they might come back. You send messages, you check in with authorities, or imagine them safe somewhere. That hope makes it easier to get out of bed, to engage with life, and to keep caring. Even if you never find them, the belief that reunion is possible gives your life meaning. The opposition's deflection, and implicitly they concede the analysis, is that hope is futile if the person is dead and there's no point in searching. But if the person is never, even if the person is never found, hope gives purpose and prevents immobilization. So even if the chance is low, it's still worth it because you're saving a life and turning around all this grief and suffering. In Neg World, hope is gone. There's only despair and paralysis. Afterworld provides emotional uplift and actionable purpose, making life bearable and meaningful. Their second response is that searching is non-unique, but this ignores the fact that loved ones pushing for it is the primary purpose of why authorities keep looking. So the impact is that the individual retains agency, optimism, and life purpose, and in Neg World, they are hopeless, immobilized, and emotionally drained. On personal growth, believing the loved one chose to leave promotes adaptive coping and long-term growth. Instead of being trapped in chaotic grief, you can integrate the experience into your life story. You process emotions, you maintain healthy relationships, and you grow stronger as a person. Your life continues with purpose and functionality. The op concedes this cleanly. The individual will gain resilience and personal growth. In Neg World, emotional development is blocked. Thank you.
All right, great debate, guys. Good round.
Yeah, good debate.
Yes, thank you.
Great
Good debate.
debate.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So it is now the judge's turn to make our decision. We will make our decision and then we'll talk when we're back.
That's good.
Thank you.
Hi, can you for watching, please?